The history of our town, Coppell, Texas, begins here at Grapevine Springs. The discovery of arrowheads and other artifacts leads us to believe that Indians camped here as early as the 1600s. A cool, refreshing spring bubbling out of the ground made this a popular camping site. Wild grapes growing in abundance apparently gave the area its name, as well as lending their name to the nearby town of Grapevine. Grapevine Springs Trail, a path that the pioneers followed coming out of Dallas, ends here. In 1843, our most historically significant event happened here at Grapevine Springs. Sam Houston, President of the Republic of Texas, traveled from South Texas to Grapevine Springs to sign the first of a series of important treaties with the Indians. While many of the tribes gathered here to sign, one especially violent tribe, the Comanches, delayed the ceremony and would not cooperate. Houston camped here for 6 weeks, but then left to attend to other important matters, one being the approaching statehood of Texas. For reasons unknown to us, Houston's agents and the Indian tribes left Grapevine Springs and went to an abandoned fort, Bird's Fort, which is located near our present-day Six Flags Over Texas, to sign the treaty which Houston eventually also signed. In 1937, during the latter part of the Great Depression, the Works Progress Administration made Grapevine Springs into a state park. Stone pillars were built at the 2 entrances to the park. Stone retaining walls were constructed. The creek bed was cleared. A dam was added, and bridges were built over the creek. By the late 1940s, the park had been abandoned and the land reverted to private ownership, but it was maintained by its owner, Webb Roberts, in pristine condition. In the 1990s, the city of Coppell purchased the land and Dallas County restored the park.
Settlement around here was slower than in South Texas, but was promoted by a land company called Peters Colony in the 1800s. The first settler to this area was James Parrish, who arrived in 1848, acquired a 640-acre land grant along what is now known as Moore Road.
The Parrish family's donation of land to a public cemetery created what we now call the historical Bethel Cemetery, and the Parrish Family Cemetery is one of 4 historical cemeteries in our town. There were 3 separate rural areas in the 1800s. The first was Bethel, just a church and school near the intersection of present Moore and Bethel School roads. The second was Gentry, a school south of present Coppell and north of Highway 114. The third was Gibbs, which was to become Coppell. Our town's first name was Gibbs, named for Barnett Gibbs, who was to become Lieutenant Governor of the state of Texas and who owned a large ranch much farther south. We suspect that our town took his name because during his political career he was recognized as an advocate for the common farmer. In the 19th century, once a town had a name, it seldom changed. For instance, there is McKinney, Frisco, Grapevine, Louisville, Carrollton, and even Dallas. But an event happened at the turn of the century that made our town change its name.
The railroad was built through Gibbs in 1888, and the location of the train stop became known as Gibbs Station. In 1890, the railroad built a large depot at the tracks near the present intersection of South Coppell Road and Southwestern Boulevard. The railroad company named its new depot Coppell. 2 years later, the town of Gibbs officially changed its name to Coppell. For 120 years, Coppell residents knew almost nothing about the man for whom their town was named, George Coppell. Just recently, we have discovered that he was a wealthy New York investor whose business interests often involved railroads. Although he never lived here, and although he probably never even saw our town, his involvement with our railroad is the reason Coppell was named for him.
The town of Coppell, or Gibbs as it was called before 1890, was located primarily along West Bethel Road. As early as 1874, there was a general store here and a post office in that store by 1887. Down through the years, there were other general stores, blacksmith shops, a barber shop, a lumber yard, a gasoline station, and a bank that went out of business even before the Depression. By 1893, Coppell had 4 stores, a lumber yard, a blacksmith shop, a cotton gin, and a schoolhouse. Residents were primarily farmers, and by the 1930s, the major crop was cotton. The oldest building still standing in Coppell is the Kirkland House, built in 1904 by descendants of the Stringfellow family. The Kirkland House, owned by the city of Coppell, has been moved 1 block from its original location and is now being restored with help from the Coppell Historical Society. The Stringfellows donated land for the first church buildings, first about a mile west of downtown Coppell, and later in the heart of Coppell, the First Methodist Church. The First Baptist Church was organized in 1896 and had a building by 1901. It was replaced in 1947 by a building that still stands in Coppell. Here at the intersection of South Coppell Road and West Bethel Road, across from the Methodist Church and next to the original location of the Kirkland House. Some of the well-known pioneer families in Coppell were named Parrish, Harrison, Moore, Stringfellow, Kirkland, Bennett, Cooper, Duncan, Bullock, McDowell, Thweet, and Harwell.
Schools have always played an important role in the life of Coppell. The earliest school was in existence by 1879. By 1928, 3 rural schools, Gentry, Bethel, and Coppell, had consolidated. They built a new brick building, but it burned in 1949. However, it was rebuilt and became what we know today as Pinkerton Elementary School. Until Interstate 35 was built, Old Denton Road was the thoroughfare from Dallas to Denton. Travelers from Dallas would come to Carrollton, turn west on our Sandy Lake Road, and then they would turn north again at our Denton Tap and head toward Louisville and Denton. As they passed through Coppell, they could, if they wanted, stop for a cold beverage at one of our town's honky-tonks. These were bars that were located along Sandy Lake Road and Denton Tap. Crude buildings, usually containing dance floors and jukeboxes, and sometimes they sold gasoline and groceries. They had names like The Last Chance, Shot and Elsie's, and the Dewdrop Inn sat right here on this site on Sandy Lake Road.
The name Denton Tap Road has always seemed unusual, a mystery, until you realize that Beltline Road, coming north from the Irving area, turned sharply east and made its way to Carrollton. There was no official paved road going from here to Old Denton Road. Once the road was put in, it tapped Denton Road, hence the name Denton Tap Road. Although Old Denton Road changed to Sandy Lake Road, we still have Denton Tap.
One often hears that Coppell was home to many pig farms, but that really isn't true. What Coppell did have for a long time, dairies, east and southeast of town. The pig farm legend probably got its start because there was one very large pig farm right here on this land at the corner of Sandy Lake and Denton Tap. Now there's a large grocery store that stands where the pig farm used to be.
In the 1950s, the citizens of Coppell became more serious about city matters. In 1955, the water board was created and a public water system was constructed. In 1956, we elected our first mayor, and the volunteer fire department was organized in 1958. The North Lake Generating Plant was built in 1959, giving our school district a good tax base. We became the Coppell Independent School District that year. The town of Coppell became the city of Coppell in 1962 when we officially incorporated. By 1970, we had a population of over 1,700 people with 8 businesses. In 1974, the DFW International Airport opened. Coppell was planning for the future, for the most part, with zoning, commercial development, retail development, and housing development. Today, in 2011, our population is 40,000 plus. The city has plans for preserving and developing Old Town Coppell, supplementing Grapevine Springs Park, and expanding Town Center.
The Coppell Historical Society tries to research and document Coppell's history. We welcome old photographs that we can add to our collection. Come and join us. Help us preserve our past.